Morning. It's Monday morning, and we're here to say hello to you. We know we're a little bit late, and if you're like us, you might be hearing a little bit of fish tank noise or something in the background. We're not sure what the heck's going on, but we're here anyway because it's Monday momentum, and no matter what, we all need it. So, happy holidays. I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. We have a fabulous guest with us today, Nancy Zare, and she's going to be talking about how you can maximize the networking you'll be doing during the holidays, the people that you'll be meeting or spending time with in a different way that you might not have otherwise, and then how we can leverage that after the holidays into perhaps some bigger and better sales. So we're going to dive right in. First, I'll introduce Linda, and then we'll go on over to Nancy. Linda, say hi.
Well, good morning. Hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. I got to say this. I had a phone call with a prospect this morning, and we chatted just for a few minutes, and I said to him, let's plan on talking this afternoon at 3 or 3:30. If you get done earlier, call me. And the phone disconnected. And the first thing I thought of was Nancy and her system and how he was being like really, really direct. And then about 5 minutes later or so, he called me back and said he's sorry we got disconnected. So anyway, Nancy, perhaps you can introduce yourself and tell us why I might have had that first impression that he was very direct and to the point.
Well, I don't know what was going through your head, but I do know that there are 4 different styles by which people tend to process information and are able to come to decisions and especially make buying decisions. And those 4 different styles have been dated back to the era of Hippocrates, in which he actually treated people medically based upon those differences. And then, as it turns out, there are actual psychological as well as biological differences in how people behave and think. When you know how they behave and think and you match it, now the trust is high, comfort is high, resistance is low, and now you're able to do business together. And that's basically what I teach. So clearly you were feeling somewhat of a disconnect, I'm guessing.
Is that right, Linda?
I was feeling that my thought was, this guy is really direct. When I speak with him this afternoon, I got to make sure that I'm just hitting it right on. So
I'm assuming that I know from some of the stuff that Linda and I have shared in terms of education at CEO Space that Linda might be a little bit ahead of the curve on recognizing that, oh, this guy's different from me, and that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with him. We're past the point of judging and recognizing that we all have different styles. So Nancy's going to add to that a little bit. But I'm curious, Linda, the directness, will that make a difference for how you, well, you said you'll have to be right on it, but is there anything else you would add to that? Because, this girl, she gets accused of being really direct, too, sometimes, pretty much all the time.
So actually what I'd love to do is have Nancy introduce herself, tell us a little bit about her background, and why I might be thinking he was a blueprint.
A blueprint. Okay, yeah, well, Nancy, take it away, because what's a blueprint?
Okay. So here's the scoop. I mentioned there were 4 different personality types, and you may be familiar with systems like Myers-Briggs or DISC or Wilson Learning System, those sorts of things. It doesn't matter what you call them, but there are 4 different ways that people process information. I use a system called BANK, B-A-N-K. I like that word, first of all, because I like banks. I like to go to them, put my money in, take my money out. But it turns out that BANK is also an acronym, and each of the 4 words that compose BANK are actually very descriptive. So the B in BANK stands for blueprint. And this is a person, as you can imagine from thinking about a blueprint, is very measured, very detailed, a planner, and they stay within the box. The second letter in BANK, A, stands for action, and this is the person who's always multitasking, massive action, impulsive, spontaneous. They're always doing, doing, doing. The N in bank stands for nurturer. And as you can imagine, someone who is a nurturer comes from a heart space, and they're interested in relationships and connecting. And finally, the K in bank stands for knowledge. And this is the person who takes a deep nosedive into learning and information and wants to get as much research and know as much as he or she possibly can. So those are the four very quick differences in the personality system.
Great. So tell me, do you know what you are, Nancy?
I know what I am, and what I do is I help people figure out not only what they are, which is interesting, but more importantly, Sarah, it's what the other person is. So if you're trying to connect with a prospect at a networking event, you've met someone new, or maybe you're reestablishing a relationship that perhaps you've had over the year, you want to talk the language of the other person. It's like going to you're at a smorgasbord, and it turns out there are people from all countries. And if you persist in speaking English when you meet somebody who speaks French or German, how far will the conversation go? Not very far. But if you switch over to their language, now they feel at ease. They feel comfortable with you. I call it a likability. And that's my system, a likability. Now they feel alike, and now we can converse and maybe do business together. And that's what I teach, is how to diagnose their personality code, match it, so that you can be in rapport.
Great. So I'm imagining, because it's a wonderful metaphor, I think is the right word, example, going to a buffet of languages, basically. But I'm thinking that there are people out there that would say, what do you mean, I got to learn a whole other language? And I would like to encourage the audience to realize that you don't have to learn the whole dang thing. You don't have to be fluent. You don't have to turn into somebody that speaks Spanish when you used to only speak English or whatever. But when you make an effort to at least use some of the language, some of the skills, the other person feels that and responds to it. I mean, I know that from experience because I'm bilingual, that I'm not always that great. But people really appreciate it when you try to speak their language and try to understand them from their point of view. So don't be afraid that you've got to like completely transform yourself. Am I right?
That's a great point, because it turns out that we have all four types within us. And it's like when we were babies and we were going blah 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 and we just babbling. Well, guess what? That babble can turn into any language. And of course, what's reinforced if you speak English is English language. If you speak a different language, that gets reinforced. Well, it's the same with our personality types. We have all four within us. We're not missing anything. And so when you authentically bring out that part in you that matches the other person, lo and behold, they feel comfortable. They feel like you get me. And as a result, you're more likely to move forward and be able to, happily consummate a deal. And that's basically what I'm helping you do.
Great.
So you're right. Don't switch your language. Keep with your own language, but use some of the other person's attributes in order to connect. And that's, Linda, what you said you're going to do this afternoon.
Now, Nancy, I know this is really good for business and for prospects, but what about personal relationships?
Great point, Linda, because some of the best things that people tell me from using this system is how it actually helps relationships. Yesterday I was talking with a friend, and she was telling me about a situation with her son's fiancé. And this is obviously a woman who's going to be entering her life as a daughter-in-law, and she was feeling, kind of disconnected to this woman. And I said, well, here's how you connect. And we went back and we looked at the kind of person that she was. She told me the woman's very chatty. Well, I know that chatty people tend to be nurturers. Second, she told me that the woman was very much focused on herself, very much interested in how everything revolved around her. Well, that's very much a characteristic of the action person. I said, so now that you know that she's both action and nurturing, what you can do is bring out that part in you and make a friend. And when you make a friend, all of a sudden that relationship that feels strained is going to be at ease. So that's an application in personal life. I've also had people tell me how they were able to reconnect with an estranged member of their family, or they were able to, feel, they've actually used it for dating, like what kind of person am I looking for, and how can I track that person in my, little description. So this has been used for many applications personally as well as professionally.
Well, and I just want to remind everybody that there's no such thing as only business and only personal. Your whole life is relationships, and some of them might end up in sales, and some of them might end up in marriage, but it's the same thing. Having those relationship skills, communication skills, can help you everywhere. And we're not allowed, momentum, to compartmentalize our lives and fool ourselves into thinking that here is business and here is everything else. Guess what? It's all your life. So just a little reminder. Nancy, I wanted to let you know, and I'm sorry about the echo, it seems to be coming from me every time I talk, so that much we know. We started about 12 minutes ago, so we're already almost halfway through, and I know that you have probably some important points that you want to make sure you get out there, and we don't know what they are. So if you feel as though there's a place you would like to take us right now, do so. Otherwise, of course, I just want to know the steps. How can somebody recognize quickly what they're dealing with and quick actions that they might be able to take? Because obviously they're going to need to follow up with you if they want some more in-depth and deeper knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Well, in terms of some quick tips is that first is to recognize that, yes, people are different, and differences that you can, when you match those differences and you speak in that language, you're going to build rapport and obviously facilitate a better working relationship. Of the 4 types, Linda happened to mention, she said this person was very direct. We don't need to know a name for that type, but for Linda to be successful in working with that person, then she needs to match that directness. Now, if I heard her correctly, Linda, you were saying that this person was kind of a bottom line person. He was asking for things, almost bullet points, like quick, 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 here's what I want. Well, if that's the case, Linda doesn't want to give a explanation. She does. Linda, is that the kind of person that you were working with?
I honestly don't know what his personality is. We only spoke for a few minutes, and because of that disconnect, I interpreted that he hung up, and he really didn't. So now I'm not sure what type of personality he is.
Okay, so in order to help people figure out the personality, there are 3 ways that our personality can be detected. One is through our vocal qualities. And if you think about it, some people are very fast bursts. They use acronyms. They're very quick, and they have high energy and a lot of volume. That usually is a different person than the one who is very slow, methodical, and speaks in full sentences. You actually hear a period at the end of the sentence, and you know that they've completed a paragraph because they stop and they expect you now to take over in the conversation. That's a different characteristic vocally than the person who has a kind of sing-song, warm voice, and you just feel like you're being hugged as they speak, and they're very passionate and enthusiastic and have full volume. And then your 4th type is very pauses, looks for the right word, and there's not a lot coming forth. So notice just from vocal qualities how you can quickly figure out, wow, I'm talking to a certain kind of person. And on the phone, Linda, if you match the way that person's volume and rate goes, you're going to be in rapport and they're going to feel more comfortable. So that's one way to detect personality, is through vocal qualities. So let me ask, Linda, what kind of vocal qualities did you hear?
It didn't dawn on me, Nancy, until that disconnect. I did not go into the conversation trying to analyze what type he was. And I think in the future, I am going to be doing that. So thanks for those tips. That's really interesting.
You'll be talking to him later today, right, Linda? That's the plan, or later on at some point?
Today, yes.
Yeah. So then you can do some of this and see. My prediction is you were right. You just didn't have that much information, so you don't want to.
But the fact he called me back and didn't want me to think that he had hung up on me makes me think that he has more of that caring quality in him.
Mm-hmm. And he may be, like us, aware that people are different and aware then that this is the way that I tend to sometimes turn people off, and I better go and do a little healing. Because that's, again, once you realize that people are different, then you know, I know, what your common mistakes are or common disconnects, I would rather say. It's not an error. It's just, oh, I operate this way, you operate that way. Once in a while I stumble and I need to go clean it up because you don't get me. I get me, but you don't.
So, you know, Nancy, we're going into the holiday system. I would love to know more about how I can use this when I go to some of these networking parties.
Okay, so of course, at a networking party, you can actually see people. And the second thing that you can use is to notice what they're wearing. Because, again, you're going to find 4 different styles of fashion. You're going to find the person who's very formally dressed for the occasion. Then you're going to find somebody who's outlandishly dressed and flamboyantly dressed and maybe even sexily dressed, and that's a very different style. Then you're going to find the person who, again, might be having the holiday sweater, and they just seem so huggable and approachable. And, you know, and they're all about the accoutrements that say holidays, holidays. And then finally there'll be the person who is dressed. They don't care about style. They don't care about fashion. They just know they have to put clothes on and appear. So again, those 4 types are very different styles. So looking at somebody, Linda, can help you figure it out. Because you want to give people the language that they feel comfortable with. And when you do, that's when you're going to be able to network successfully. Does that make sense?
Absolutely does. Now, you know, it's a networking event, and it might be for one of the business organizations or whatnot. What do you feel about, you know, meeting somebody and, like, you know, here's my business card?
Oh, you know, it's interesting. A lot of people kind of push their business cards at us as if that is establishing a relationship, and it doesn't. In fact, for many people, it's a turnoff. But again, if you know what style they are, because they're pushing their business card tells you their style, and if you respond in kind, you're going to be in rapport. In fact, early this morning, I had an appointment with a group of people, and one of the people who is the kind who would push his business card, you know, was there at the meeting, and I knew to tease him. I knew right away this is a guy who is very charismatic, likes to have fun, and I gave it right back to him. And instead of it, you know, now other people would have felt, oh my gosh, she's a little forward, this isn't my cup of tea. He loved it. It was all about him, he was getting attention, and I had a meeting out of my hand.
So somebody that's pushing their business card is someone that wants some attention and you can give it to them? Is that sort of what you're saying? They're used to...
Yes. They're not looking for a relationship. They're what we call the hunter. You know, the hunter is boom, 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 I got one. And by the way, they spray a lot of bullets to snag one. And they're very competitive and they want to win. And so when you give them your admiration and attention, you get them. As opposed to somebody else who would, oh my God, the last thing they do is to give you a business card at a social occasion. You know, so again, knowing who you're dealing with can make it's a lot of fun. It's like being an anthropologist at the event, as well as being able to find the right people that you want to connect with later.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a great one. I'm glad we talked about the business card. So good job, Linda, because I see that a lot, and I tend to play with people. I don't know if that I'm doing it at the right time with the right people, but I often say, I'm not really ready for your card yet. Because I have seen that, and yeah, they just kind of throw them. They put them on the table, they get them out, all that stuff. That makes perfect sense. And I think, well, why would you want to waste your card giving it to me when I don't want it? At least not yet. You spent all that money to have it printed. Don't just throw it away.
Well, now you understand, Sarah, that it's buckshot, that they're spraying, and it's buckshot. They're hunting. And I agree with you. For me, that's not a great way to network. They're hoping, like, if I give out 100 cards, maybe 2 or 3, times I'm going to hit the mark. And it's a numbers game. But guess what? Sales does not have to be a numbers game that way. You can increase getting more yeses when you speak somebody's language authentically than when you spray a bunch of buckshot.
So for the hunter guy or girl, if they spent some time with you, Nancy, learning that, well, this is my style, but I need to make sure, if I want more success, that I use it when I'm around other hunters. And the rest of the time, it wouldn't be such a great idea. And if I can learn to distinguish that, I would do a little bit better. Is that right?
It's true. It's very true. So knowing one style can be helpful that way because we may have to dial it down. On the other hand, we may have to, again, dial up another part of our style in order to make more of a connection. So knowing one style is helpful because it's like a double-edged sword. There are ways that it brings us to connect with people, and then there are ways that it makes people, be repelled. And you want to know what's repelling somebody as well as what's attracting somebody. And that way you can be a more savvy, entrepreneur.
Great.
Can you talk about the people who always want to think it over?
Well, they do have to think it over, Linda. They need to become an expert in that subject matter before they can make a buying decision or before they can do business with you. And when they need to think it over, you actually want to supply them with stuff to think it over. So you want to give them a website. You want to give them, if you have any written documentation, you want to give them things to read and so forth. Because one of the 4 styles is a think it over style. And you want to honor and respect that. This is the person who will speak more slowly, with a pause. In fact, they may not give you a lot of eye contact. And they come across as maybe even being a little socially awkward, like they're standing away from the mill of the people. They're, maybe standing against the wall, or maybe they're standing at the food table, not necessarily eating, but that's a place for them to be. So that person does need to think it over. When the other 3 people tell you, I want to think it over, that's an objection. And if you know that that's an objection, now you need to, of course, ask a different question and steer the conversation to find out, well, what is it that I haven't explained so that your response is, go away, I got to think it over.
So if you have someone that speaks slowly the way you described, and they say, I want to think it over, you would provide them with lots of information. If it's somebody else that's talking as fast as I am right now, and I said, I need to think it over, you would explore with me and find out what other information do you need. Is that a good summary?
It's a good summary, and again, if I'm dealing with someone like you, Sarah, who's very fast and quick and bottom line, I would give you no information because that's not what you're asking for. You are impulsive, spontaneous, flexible. If you don't make a decision now, guess what? You're gone. And when I know that, then I know to say either, this isn't the right opportunity for you, let's keep in touch because eventually it may be, and I would never want to give you a lot more information because you're not ready.
And because you can see behind me, I already have a ton of information.
Usually the person who is fast like you is not a reader, and they don't like to read. I'm not saying you have, obviously you have all 4 codes within you, but generally speaking, that person who's very fast, quick, bottom line, they're not readers. they just, it's spontaneous, it's impulsive, it's experiential. You want to grab them with sizzle. You want to paint the excitement and the enthusiasm of, oh my God, Sarah, this is the most terrific thing, and I can't wait for us to get started. Started on what? You're not even saying, because they don't care about the substance. They care about the excitement and the sizzle.
Okay, well, everybody that's watching, you stay away now. Don't be offering me these sizzle. I got enough to do. Okay, well, that's interesting. I'd like to hear a little bit more about Linda now that you've just ripped me wide open and the entire.
So you want to hear about Linda? Linda, of course, is very thoughtful. She's a deep thinker, etc. But she also has a heart warm as gold. So, and if you didn't know that, Sarah, then you don't know Linda.
Yeah.
So, Nancy, can you just talk briefly? Some people might be, say, more balanced in all four. Other people might be a little overpowering in one or more. Can you talk about that?
Well, again, just to reiterate, all four reside within us. I actually can offer people a complimentary assessment of what their type is, and they'll actually see what of the order they're in. People can be more balanced, and I find that the people who excel in sales are the ones who are like a chameleon. They morph into the other person's style, and they do it so unperceptibly, and they do it so subtly that if you ask them what they're doing, they don't have an answer, and if you watch them, you wouldn't even observe and know what they did. And yet, the success is obvious because they make friends with everyone. Wouldn't that be a great skill to possess?
Yeah, definitely. And I think you're right that some people just do it naturally and they can't even articulate it. They may have learned it as a child or something, and it served them well, so they are doing it. And some of us are very deliberate. We have to learn this skill. So,
and that's what I teach. I teach people, and I give you a shortcut on how to get there. Because even the person who looked natural for, actually through trial and error, they were able to figure it out. Not consciously necessarily, but experientially. And I can make it a conscious subject that you can learn and become an expert in.
So I'll just segue into that because we are running out of time. Nancy has said fabulously, and I'm right there online, that she'll offer a free assessment for anyone that's interested. Is that right? I want to make sure because we're going out to the world now. Okay. And
absolutely.
When you go to mymondaymomentum.com /resources, or just go to the My Monday Momentum website, you will see Nancy's page on tips and tricks for all of this stuff and a link to her website. So I'm assuming, Nancy, that that's how you would like them to contact you if they're interested in having that free, I want to say appraisal, but that's not the right word.
Assessment.
Assessment. Would you like them to go to your site?
Perfect. And, they can get the free tip sheet. They can also get an assessment on their personality style, and that can help them understand themselves better in terms of making relationships.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so we are pretty much out of time. I would love to have you sign off, Nancy, and say a little bit, if you can. I know we're putting you on the spot now. Give out your website again because we don't have the lower third. Anything else you would like about how people would contact you? And then did you have anything that you would like to celebrate from the last week or so? Because we like to close with a celebration.
So I will start with a celebration because I like to celebrate. And so I am celebrating the fact that I have an ebook coming out, my first ebook, and so I am celebrating that. As far as getting in contact with me, rapportbuilders.com, and the final S on builders is actually a Z. It stands for my last name, Zare. So rapportbuilders.com is how you can contact me for both the tip sheet as well as the likability assessment. And I want to thank both of you, Sarah and Linda, for inviting me to participate. This is a great way to start a Monday morning and get lots of momentum. So happy sales to everybody and happy holidays.
Thanks, Nancy. Hey, Linda, you want to close it out?
All right, so this has been great, Nancy. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Linda Kay, and what I do is I help people with products, services, and ideas profit on the internet. So I am going to be using your techniques when I speak with that prospect this afternoon.
And Linda, do you have anything to celebrate this week?
Actually, I do. I launched an exciting new website. It's called rockabillylegends.com, and it's been a labor of love. I've been working on this website for a couple months now, and what a shame. I've had to listen to all these audio clips from the great legends, you know, Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, Roy Orbison, all these old greats that really were the foundation for rock and roll. So rockabillylegends.com was my new win this week. Finally got it launched.
Sounds like it was really a bummer listening to all that music.
Oh, it was tough.
Great. Thank you. So I'm Sarah Coolidge. You can see my name right down there. You can find all sorts of interesting stuff at our website, mymondaymomentum.com, including this video will be up shortly. And my celebration, I have a few. One of them is I want to celebrate Nancy getting on this Hangout, doing this with us. You can tell it's interesting sometimes. We're not sure how things are going to go. We didn't figure out in time how to get her a lower third, and you know we've got this funny echo, and that's just how it goes sometimes. So the celebration is that we keep going and that we keep learning no matter what. We don't give up and run away and hide. And that's Sarah, and you know I'm sure Nancy has something to say about that too. So please continue to interact with our website. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you're using, what you want to hear about, and we'll do our best to get it on here for you. And go out there and have a great week now so you can slide into Friday feeling really good about it. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.